before, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Terrific. Any questions?
I'll just make a comment that I appreciate the multiple quotes. I'm running with Dan. We're running a purchasing subcommittee right now, and we're going through this right now. And we're talking about this exact thing with the multiple quotes. So I'm glad to see it's already being done in action without the official policy coming out. So, thank you.
And it's very difficult sometimes
You
to
know,
get
this,
these
yeah,
quotes.
this, it was surprisingly much harder than I thought it was gonna be. And,
Yeah.
and like with chasing down plumbers, maybe they're busy and great for
That's
them,
great.
but it was like,
Right.
holy smokes, I didn't think it was gonna be quite the cumbersome.
Other questions, comments?
Go ahead.
You have one?
Yeah. Sometimes when you start a project like this, there's growth. And if you don't have any contingency in this number, then you have to come back for approval to spend more. So I'm not saying we should change the number at this time, but something to keep in mind when you, based on the complexity of a problem, whether it's wiring has to be moved or whatever, you can get a contract change coming in from one of your contractors that could add to it. Probably doesn't apply here, but something to consider in the future.
Thank you.
To give yourself some margin.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I'll move to approve the expenditure of up to $9,604.01 from the Powerhouse Fund to purchase and install various new kitchen appliances at the senior center. It is to be noted that $3,000 of the expenditure is a donation from the Anna Lions Club.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further comments? I'd just like to commend the Council on Aging members here tonight. Thank you for your service to our town and supporting this dynamic director that we have here. We run quite a busy show over there, and I know she feels very supported, and the town is well served. Thank you.
And speaking of that, we'll see you on Friday at our pig roast.
I can't wait for the pig roast on Friday.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. You were not voting for the pig roast. You were voting for I
Thank you.
should have paused there, right? Thank you, Kathy. Thanks for all the work you put into that. We're going to review and authorize the first selectman to enter into an agreement with the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District for the installation and incorporation of stormwater best management practices in and along Grand Street. Victor Benny is our town engineer, and he's here to explain exactly what that all means. And well, we had a little discussion this afternoon. I said, jazz it up a little bit, make this the stormwater discussion sexy, if it's possible. But it is. It's an exciting project, as you started to explain it to
is.
me.
Could be, sure. So for the, do I have to do it for the record? Victor Benny, I'm the East Lyme Town Engineer. I guess I want to start out with letting you all know, and you may know already, that as part of the Public Works Department's pavement management program, we are repaving what I'll be referring to as the Grant Street area list of roads. And what that means is, and I'll hand out a quick GIS section here that has those sections of the roads highlighted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as you can see, that includes Grand Street, moving north to Smith Street, south to Lincoln Street, including Beckwith Street, North Washington Avenue, York Avenue, and the eastern section of Hope Street from approximately the Rings End section to Pennsylvania Avenue. So with all that paving, what I'm up against from the general permit version of the MS4 program that we have to go through with Connecticut Deep. The MS4 general permit is a mandatory permit that we have to assume with Deep, and what it stands for is it's the general permit for discharge of stormwater from small municipal separate storm sewer systems. So part of the requirements of that permit mandate that we have to remove some of the pervious surfaces or paved surfaces from our storm sewer systems. This We have a storm sewer system that runs along Grant Street and up through most of these roads shown on your GIS. It encompasses and collects stormwater from about a 55-acre area of downtown. So that's listed with deep as an urban area. And again, part of that MS4 program is that they tax us with, by the 5th year of the program, and it's just been renewed this year, so by the 5th year of the program, 5 years from now, I have to actively remove about 2% of our impervious surfaces from entering storm or entering water bodies such as, in this case, the Niantic River. So how do we do that? We come up with low-impact stormwater management measures, and in this case, we're considering sumps to our catch basins, which collect sediment and debris, tree filter units that we're going to self-design in-house as part of this program. We've installed tree filters across town through a few sections of town already and had good luck with them through some of the stormwater testing that we do. We've shown or proven that they do have an effect on lowering E. coli in the stormwater. So we're going to kind of come up with our own design on that, which incorporates 2 different sections of the stormwater management manual that DEEP puts out, and this will make it so we can install more of these across this section of this watershed. And we're also working with installing a couple of dry wells throughout this area, just low points where our storm sewer system doesn't currently collect water in those areas. We have puddling, so if we install dry wells, that incorporates infiltration of the phosphorus, nitrogens, the pollutants, and oils into the ground before they enter, again, water bodies, in this case, like the Niantic River. So in all that, the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District and Connecticut DEP have come together with a grant that pulls money from Section 319 of the Clean Water Act. So through all this, the town won't be spending any of the money. The money is being exchanged or being spent by the Eastern Conservation District, but we will potentially be benefiting from, again, these materials that could be installed across this section of the watershed, and again, have a positive environmental impact on the Niantic watershed and Long Island Sound. So the total amount of the grant is $92,500. We have to not come up with, but there's a 40% match, and a lot of that match is going to be included with actually the paving that we're doing, some of the improvements that we've already made through the work of the highway department, labor and materials that they've already spent on improving the catch basin tops throughout that area. So these are all necessary improvements that we take in the normal reconstruction or repaving of a road. So it's going to work out nicely that the match money is already being spent. The labor that we're putting into designing the tree filters and monitoring the program will also be put into the match. So again, it's no real cost to the town to move forward with this. Just going through my bullets, which I strayed off of here.
Well, you didn't make it terribly exciting, but as you promised you would. But,
Well,
but
saving money, I figured that
saving
was
money,
too, and
new
and-
kind of cutting edge stuff that we're going to be forced to do 5 years from now with
within 5 years.
within
right, yeah.
5 years, and so we're moving toward but basically stormwater being cleaned by trees and vegetation.
How do you make that exciting, really?
Really, that's what it is. But it's pretty cool stuff, and it doesn't cost the taxpayers of East Lyme. It doesn't come out of our operating budget, which is it's a good thing. And we're eligible for these grants, and we're asking this board to authorize me to sign into an agreement. Is that right?
Correct.
I'll put a resolution out for discussion. Resolved to authorize the first selectman in the name and on behalf of the town to execute and deliver a memorandum of understanding between the town and the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District for the installation and incorporation of stormwater best management practice to the existing stormwater drainage infrastructure in and along Grand Street and adjacent street locations.
Second.
Great. Any discussion, questions?
Some questions.
Sure.
So where are the tree filters going on town property?
Correct. They would be installed within the right of way, but along property frontages of other residential properties within that Grant Street area And the Eastern Conservation District representative is gonna try to work with those individual property owners to, play a role in participating in maintenance of those structures, and it's gonna in effect enhance their frontage of their property within the design that we're coming up with. It's not gonna be a concrete box in the ground and make the front of their property look ugly. So we're trying to stick to the design concepts of the streetscape with the granite curbs and such, and so.
Could you,
Yes, sir.
you're not putting swales in and the trees in the swale, this is,
Was,
you're gonna put, is there pipes under the
So
tree
the-
where the roots are?
So
That's what I'm-
in this case, the receiving soils or the soils below the tree filters are such incredibly good sandy, loamy soils that we're expecting that the percolation rate or the rate that the stormwater would travel through would make it so it wouldn't justify needing to put in a under drain overflow pipe. So in this case, the individual tree filters are treating a smaller paved area. Because of their size, they only treat a small area, but they also treat a small amount of stormwater. That first flush of stormwater that
Essentially.
carries all of the pollutants and sediment load with it would enter the tree filter when the tree filter's has had enough, which is approximately 100 to 200 gallons, so about 2 bathtubs full of water at that point. It overfills, and gravity takes the stormwater back along the edge of curb or the edge of road down to the next stormwater structure or to the next tree filter, whichever it may be.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Yes, Mrs. Hardy.
So is this going to be done in conjunction with the paving?
Yes, that's the tricky part on our part, that we're working with Tilcon, in this case is the paving company. So Tilcon's gonna install the first layer of pavement and then give us a couple weeks to install these, so we're not disturbing the new pavement during the install process. So we've kind of worked with Tilcon to give us a little break in time between the binder coat and the top coat.
And are we talking about existing trees on private property? Or
It
are
will-
there going to be new trees
These
planted?
right, there'll be new trees on town property. And so they're trees that are, sized to accommodate the units. Are not gonna be trees that, that are gonna be reaching any extreme height and maturity when they reach maturity.
How disruptive is this going to be, and what's the time frame?
It shouldn't be too disruptive as far as, there should be, I think the contractor we talked with said that they could probably install 4 to 5 of these units a day for us. And again, we have about a 2-week period between the binder coat and Tilcon returning to do the top coat. So I'm expecting that, the install of the stormwater control measures to take approximately 2 weeks.
Will the roads have to be closed to traffic?
As far as for neither one of the paving process, they should remain open for all paving and stormwater installation processes, yeah.
Okay. And if approved, when would you expect this to happen?
We're on a timeline already for paving to start, I believe, in the beginning of October, so, yeah,
You've already been lifting the stormwater drains on some of the streets.
Right.
You're prepping the streets now
So
for
as far
paving.
as far as the pavement management or pavement improvement portion of the project has already started and is underway, so they're kind of, telling me, hey, if you want the stormwater stuff to happen, you better make it happen fast. So they're moving along with or without us, but I've been working probably over the course of 3 or 4 years now to try to, let DEEP know that when this downtown paving, when these projects do happen, if there is any grant money available to help us out and let us work with it. And in this case, they kind of, coincided where we were already planning to do that paving downtown, and DEEP and the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District came along and said, all right, we're ready to do something. This is an area that they really want to try to tackle as far as, improving the environmental quality of, again, the Niantic River and the Niantic River watershed.
Thank you. So is this grant, Mr. Nickerson?
You've done that before, too,
I know I have. It's a fluff up. Is this a grant where we expend the money and then they reimburse us, or is this money up front?
This is. Oh,
I don't know.
All right, good.
I don't know, no.
So this is, the town will not be spending any of the money associated with the grant. The spending of the grant money will go through the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District. That's who who DEEP has contracted with to spend the money. So if there are some items that we've already spent money on and installed that we have potential, if this is signed off on, to kind of get back payment for, to be paid back for, so, we have potential to get money back. But as far as spending any of the money, the spending shouldn't be going through the town of East Lyme. Am I getting that right? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, thank you.
Other questions, Diane?
Yeah, a couple questions,
Diego?
requirements, is to public meetings and or social media. Are you prepared to get that rolling once the agreement's signed to meet?
With the paving or the?
No, the actual, promote the project on municipal website and other social media.
We
So that-
certainly, as part of the overall project, the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District, it's part of the grant actually too, to make sure that public notice is given of the improvements and
So you're ready to go?
the education component, right, yeah.
Okay.
We'll definitely-
Secondly, the 40% co-investment, has that been presented to ECCD and have they concurred with it? Or do you have to pull that together and get them to validate?
Actually, ECCD is the entity that's already explained to us that anything associated with improvements, including the paving, which automatically bumps us into over the 40%, is included and would be included towards the 40% match, so we're gonna be way over on the 40%.
I know we've put a couple of these tree things in place and we have a responsibility to maintain it. Are we seeing a large cost so far with what we put in place?
So far, no. I try to, or I'm supposed to try to inspect them twice a year, and I usually have a couple of guys in a truck from the highway department. There's some light tree trimming to maintain sight lines that happens once in a while, but the overall, I would say that I think we have eight of them so far across town. The maintenance factor is not a huge deal. They're self-maintained.
And in the long run, let's talk about what the I guess it's federal, the EPA and DEEP, the requirements that are going to be put upon towns, talking about costs, are going to be dramatic. Going into these storm drains, the standard storm drains in front of our houses, and digging them out like monthly or every other month, several times a year. And this is the kind of project that will cut down on that, where we'll be filtering the water more naturally, and we won't less water will be going into these storm drains, the traditional storm drains, which will need much more maintenance. Correct?
Correct, yes, yeah. So less water in the storm drains, as Mr. Nickerson's saying, makes it so we should have a little bit less impact or maintenance on the catch basins and the sumps that are
Right.
there, which we clean. I believe we get through town at least once a year cleaning those.
Yeah, but
If not twice a year, so, that still all happens, but it should cut down on the overall sediment load and again, the pollution that makes its way through the stormwater system.
There are some already in town?
Right, so on Colony Road, we all know where, okay, so Colony Road, and I think they're all on Colony Road.
They are. I drive.
And well, I was gonna get to that. There's 4 on Pennsylvania Avenue that were incorporated into the last round of the streetscape program. And again, those were, I believe, Bill Shears here can correct me, but I believe those were also paid for and probably installed as part of, or at least paid for by a grant, again, that we coordinated with the ECCD. So,
Yeah.
we've been working with them. This is would be the 3rd round of working with them. I'm also on hold. I have another section on, I think it's Egret. Is it Egret? I'm thinking of road names here, seeing how good I am. Section of Egret and the Birdlands area, they call it, where
Not Bob White, though, right?
You don't want one on Bob White?
No.
We could, actually, Bob White might be on the list, but we started. They had some leftover money that it fell through, but we were going to start working with them, putting a few in that section of town. So, I have a few locations on reserve there. Should they find That's the unique thing about the program is at the end of the year when a bigger project hasn't spent all the money in their grant, DEP gets it back and tells ECCD, well, we have whatever, $40,000 we want you to spend. And they say, well, we need to find some tree filters to put in. And so I have, a few locations on reserve, and actually we'll have, a design now on reserve if we don't use the store-bought model to install more units across town, so.
So, am I correct, so you have the tree and then you have a grate that's around the tree and that the water goes into it, it's standalone, it's not tied in at all to the catch basin system?
So
It's totally
there's,
independent?
I think all of the ones that we've installed thus far are connected with an overdrain pipe at the top level of the, the inside of the unit. When it fills up with stormwater, it goes into the overdrain pipe into a downstream catch basin. And again, in this case, since since they're smaller units and right along the edge of road is how we're proposing to install them, that the overflow would happen right at the curb line and would drain down the road. And then the receiving soils are percolating at such a high rate so that you wouldn't have a ponded area in that tree filter. So we're saying we don't really need the overflow pipe in this case.
So it takes the pressure off of the, it reduces some of the water ending up in the river by
Right.
these systems, and you can place them.
Right, there's in each of the units, there's a live, if you want to say, biological process that
Yeah.
happens to break down the pollutants before they enter. I don't want to give anybody a misconception that we're going to be polluting a watershed or a water table or anything like that. The biological process that happens in these is such that it breaks down the pollutants, so you don't have to worry about that.
It's organic.
And
It's
if
natural.
you go, it's kind of funny, but if you go into the existing units, it's kind of scary when you start digging around. We clean them up, we dig around, add some more mulch to them, and it's like spaghetti. The worms coming out of these things. So the process is really working. And
Thank you.
I get to drive by the ones on Colony all the time, and they seem to have worked fine. I've never seen any puddles or problems at all. The trees look really great, and I have never heard anything but positive comments about them. We've already had them open, so.
We have a motion?
Yep.
There's
We
a
do.
market for worms,
Yeah.
There is. Make a little extra money.
Somebody's making money down on Main Street.
selling worms.
Any other questions? I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Stay right there. If it's, if you would be so kind to let me move the agenda around a little bit, where 3E, Victor submitted the FEMA package to us. And it's not for vote, it's just for your pleasure reading later. But according to our hazard mitigation plan, this report is due to this commission every year. As you know, we receive a Class 8 rating, which means our citizens, unlike most other towns in this area, our citizens are entitled to a 10% discount on their flood insurance should they fall into a flood zone. Maybe if they don't, I don't know. Because this town has gone through the trouble of the hazard mitigation plan. So this is the update. It's an annual update, and we can mark this as received. But if there were any questions, your author is here tonight. And if not, you know where to find him in the dungeon of the building here. All set with that? Just wanted to make sure. Thank you, Victor, for your stunning presentation.
It's exciting enough.
No, it really wasn't. I'm sure only the engineer on my right understood everything you said. Yeah.
So the engineer on your left doesn't have much to say?
I don't know. Yeah.
He got you.
You're bookended by
Yeah, you
engineers
got
now.
me.
Yeah.
So 3D, if I move back up, the approve the reallocation of funds for 224 Main Street and send the matter to Board of Finance for approval. Item requires town meeting. This is, I'm glad you're here, Bill Scheer. There were some comments in public delegation that need to be corrected as they contradict the facts. But I'll first kind of go over the facts are that we in 2010 went to a referendum and asked the citizens of this town if they'd like to spend $740,000 740 or 720? 740 on the purchase of the mobile station on a park to be determined later. And that was in 2010. 72% of the people that came out to vote that day voted in favor of it. $740,000 purchase. $675 was for the building. Additional amount of money was for the for the phase 1 study, for the phase 2 study, and for any cleanup that may have been necessary. A lot changed between 2010 and 2016 when we purchased the mobile station. First of all, I negotiated a significantly lower purchase price, $550,000, significantly lower. Additionally, we moved into the Brownfields program with the state, which removed 100% of our liability on any pollution that might be found on that property, because we were being insulated by the Brownfield program. This qualified as a Brownfield. We knew that going in. Lastly, the phase 1 study that was done and identified some areas of concern. It turns out the reality, after we've cleared the property and done dozens of test hole borings and all that, have only identified 2 very minor spots that would be needed to be cleared up. Am I good so far, Bill? Yeah? Iffy? Help me out.
Bill Shear, Deputy Director of Public Works. We entered a program, Brownfield program, and got an assessment grant for $200,000. We demolished the building. Our engineers said there was probably a tank, and they didn't know it was under the building. The seller's engineer said everything was fine. Lo and behold, we found a tank with 600 gallons of diesel in it. We removed that. It was intact and no leaking. Under the building, there was a hydraulic lift that was intact. That was tested, no PCBs in the oil. So both hotspot areas that Weston and Sampson identified came out very well for us. And they subsequently did 21 borings. I believe they converted 3 or 4 of them to test wells. And they have tested all that information, and they've just recently got everything back. And the site came out much less polluted than anybody thought. So we don't have the results in front of us. They're very, very complicated, and it's
Right.
It's extremely complicated. It takes them. So we were supposed to have a meeting yesterday with them and DEP to go over the programs we're in. It's actually clean enough that we're probably maybe in the wrong program. So we have options to move to other programs or do things differently, which have different levels of cleanup. It's a very complicated. I don't even have all the answers.
Right.
So next week, the meeting was scheduled for next week.
And
so
that's what DEP is coming to discuss with us next week, and DECD, the keepers of the Brownfield program. There are spots, maybe even smaller than this, that are heavily polluted, and would, a town or an owner of property would stay in a program that would isolate the liability of that, but also severely clean up a severely polluted property. The submarine base, it took them 10 years to clean up a Superfund site over there. We've identified 2 spots that need to be cleaned up. We're going to find out next week the level of cleanup. In the meantime, we've entered into this program that gave us a $200,000 grant for the demolition of the building
to invest, it's an investigational
and an
grant.
investigation of any cleanup necessary. And we've identified 2 spots.
So, yes, the short answer, yes.
Yes.
But in order to clean up the 2 spots, the grant does not cover that.
Right.
Hence, that's why we're here.
So that was just to clear up some comments, because they're all over the place. What we're asking for tonight